Starting in a second. Hopefully it will start. Now we're recording. So thanks everyone for joining in at the Power Platform User Group Cologne. With me, like my co-organizer Philip Lenz, we are like managing this overall like user group, and yeah, we have like a kind of small code of conduct. So be like respectful and friendly to each other. We don't want to have like any distribution or headhunting in here. We want to have like a community that just exchange about different things and and products of the Power Platform. You can like also find like this is PowerPoint Live, so you can just like click on the links in here. You will like find our YouTube channel again and like also our Meetup channels if you want to join there. Also like some personal advertising that we are like also looking for speakers, or if you're just like saying you're interested about a topic or have some ideas what we can do, just like please use these forms to give us some anonymous feedback. And also if you have like other questions, you can just like ask them there, or just reach out to Philip and me on LinkedIn or any other platform where we can just like talk with you and help you. Also like some save the dates that you can maybe put into your calendar. There will be some more meetings, like usually, first of all, like looking for German stuff, like German user groups, as Exploring Power BI Data Marts by Markus Wegener. And then like our user group will have like a summer break until August, when we will start with the next Power Platform What's New session, where we were talking about everything that's new in the Power Platform for the last couple of months and discussing about the latest and newest updates that the Power Platform got. Then we have like the DAX workshop with Thorsten Strauss, who will join us, and having like his second part of it from last year. Then in September again, there's like also the Power BI large data sets by Thomas Martens at our user group. And if you maybe don't know about this, there's like also some like global community meetup or community calls with the Microsoft and Power Platform developer community call and the Power Platform community calls that you can join in. And if you're like also German speaking, there's the Power Atelier by the Power Platform User Group Hannover with Tomislav and Stefan, and also some guests where they are like also presenting and talking about different stuff in there. We also have like some conferences in the next couple of weeks, a month going on. So there's like in July the Inspire, which you can join online and watch like all the newest strategy of Microsoft with like the latest updates in there. In August, the EduCon in Dallas as an in-person event where you can join in, and then a lot of conferences in September with like the Data Platform Virtual Summit as an online event by Data Platform Geeks, the Dynamics Con in San Antonio in Texas as an in-person, then the PowerThon German PowerThon online meeting. I guess it's like currently scheduled as an online meeting. We will like look how the situation is there at that time and like inform you right before that for all the German audience today in here. Then the Empower Everyone Microsoft Power Platform Conference in Orlando as an in-person event, the European Cloud Summit in Mainz as an in-person event, and again the 365 EduCon in Chicago as an in-person event. As you maybe notice, like the chat is currently not working, so we just like prepared a Microsoft Forms form you can use to just like put in your questions if you don't want to unmute yourself later. So Hugo will just like go on with his introduction, and then afterwards you will be able to ask you questions. We ask you to maybe before that raise your hand so that we can just like go through and have like a little of structure in there. And then you can just like ask Hugo all your questions. And if you, as I said, don't want to maybe unmute yourself or anything, just use this forms formula and we will read them out to Hugo and he will like answer them on screen. So therefore, Thanks very much, Hugo, for joining us today. One last more slide for that. Usually when you would be on person, we maybe have like some little gift for you or something to eat, etc. That's like online very hard to deliver to everyone and to you. So we are like planting a tree for you in Germany so that the climate is like also a little bit protected. I will send this to you later via email, and then you have like, if you maybe come back to Germany one day, you have your own tree at some coordinates you can check out here. Lügenscheid is not that far away from Cologne, and yeah, we hope like that this like is in bringing you in, yeah, very good contribution to the climate protection in Germany.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. All right. How much time do we have? Because I know we were kind of just hanging out as we were letting people come in. How much more time do you want me to take for this presentation?
I would say as long as you need. I guess we scheduled for like 1.5 hours, but like for me, it's also fine to take over that a little bit. If, as I said, like anyone needs to like leave early or something, we are just like recording this, and you can like check it out later on YouTube.
Wonderful. Okay. May I take over the screen?
Yeah, great. Sure.
Wonderful. All right. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. So my name is Hugo Bernier. I'm a community program manager, and I work for Microsoft. And you know, you might be concerned. Oh no, great! Some person that's going to try to sell me Power Pages. That's not my job. As a community program manager, my job is to interact with the community. I work with the super users, the MVPs. I work on conferences and things like that. And my primary focus is really to empower people in the community to make the most of the technology that we have to offer and to make sure that we celebrate the success of others as well. And the perspective that I'm going to be presenting Power Pages to you today is absolutely coming from that perspective. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm very passionate about Power Pages because I've been working with Power Pages and Power Apps portals for a long time. And that's what I really want to share with you today. So hopefully we can address those questions. I should point out though, yesterday I just found out I have COVID, so my brain is a little mushy today. But I will try to do my best to make a coherent presentation. All right, so we have the Microsoft Power Platform, right? And it's got the same tools that we're familiar with, and it's built on the shared platform. And behind the scenes, it uses Dataverse, right, for the data. And there's a whole bunch of developer and admin governance experience that's available. But today we're going to talk really specifically about one area that we're going to try to improve on, which is Power Apps, which is where you would normally go if you wanted to build an application, develop an application. So Power Apps really would be good for your internal apps, for your employees, people who are authenticated, people that are, that you're actually paying their salaries directly, and they have an Azure AD account or an Office 365 or Microsoft 365 account. And you would be using a Canvas app or a model app. And if you've been staying up to date with the latest updates with Power Apps, you'll know that that whole concept of Canvas app and model apps, it's starting to kind of merge together. It's no longer an either or, right? You're starting to be able to combine the best of both in one solution. But the problem is, what if, and I'm trying to remember, like Fernando, for example, Fernando has customers or partners in a manufacturing company. He doesn't necessarily want to give a license to every single person that works on a factory floor because those people may not even have an email address, but somehow we need to interact with them. And this is where, with Power Apps before, we had Power Apps portals where we could kind of connect to external websites for visitors, for citizens, for partners, and things like that. The problem is with Power Apps portals, let's face it, it is really powerful, right? And and we'll talk about how mature it is really, but it was really not a maker platform like the other Power Platform solutions. So, when we're talking about Power Platform, Power Apps portals here, yeah, it's helping enterprise and governments reach their customers and citizen audiences through digitized whatever that means, right? This is a very marketing slide, but here's the what's in it for you, right? If you have a model-driven app that you build, a form, you got Dataverse data, and you got things like that, and you want to share that application with anybody that's either in your organization or outside your organization, Power Apps Portals is up until May 24th, where we announced Power Pages, was the best way to do this. But again, like I said, it was not necessarily the most maker-friendly experience. And this is where Power Pages comes in. First of all, Power Pages kind of takes its place at the top. It's no longer an app under Power Apps. It's actually at the top. It's one of the 5 apps now where it really deserves its place, right? And Power Pages really is designed to be enterprise grade software as a service platform, and it's really intended to be low code, unlike Power Apps portals. Now you might say, oh, I don't know, like Power Pages, I'm not sure that I want to look at it because it's brand new. I get it. Like I used to be that person that I don't look at a Microsoft product until it's version 3. Well, Power Apps portals was derived from ADX Studio, which was already something that was built in Dynamics. Then it got evolved to Power Apps portals, and now we have the 3rd revision, which is Power Pages, which is really, and again, we'll talk about what's been added to Power Pages, but it really does make Power Pages, even though Power Pages is in preview, it really does make it a mature enterprise-grade solution. But it actually makes it easy for the makers who don't have to know about HTML, JavaScript, CSS, or Liquid to be able to actually build sites. So one of the things that makes it unique is obviously it is part of the bigger Power Platform family. It does rely heavily on Dataverse behind the scenes, but you also have the ability to connect with, Power Automate, Power BI, Power Virtual Agent, and leverage the connectors that are available to you. And again, we'll talk about that later. We've talked about the robust and scalable enterprise grade, but what we're trying to do here is we're trying to build a website with low code experience. But unlike the majority of the Power Platform products, if you think about it, with Power Platform, once you've exceeded or once you've reached the limit of what Power Apps can do or Power Automate can do, you're kind of stuck, right? You can't really do more than what it was designed to do. But what I love about Power Pages is once you get to the limit of what Power Pages can do, you're just starting because now you can crack open JavaScript, HTML, CSS, Liquid. You can really take it to places where we hadn't even thought about it. Of course, that's when we go from low code to pro dev customizations. But Power Pages is one of the products that is absolutely designed with the idea that pro devs exist and that we should make sure that we cater to them as well. We've got lots of templates that are available to you, and we're planning on adding more. And I'll talk to you later about how I started building a sample repository where you can contribute samples as well to help people get started. And you got an extensible data model because it's built on Dataverse behind the scene. I promise I don't have too many slides. The majority of my presentation is going to be demos. So again, we talked about the pro dev experience, but you can actually go in, use Visual Studio Code, right, to crack open the code, and especially if you're planning on editing things like JavaScript and things like that, it makes it a lot easier to be editing in a tool that was designed to actually edit code, as opposed to trying to do on a website. But if you want to use things like Azure DevOps, GitHub, and really enable the concept of your fusion teams, right, where you're working hand in hand with the business users, the makers, and the pro devs all in one team. This is designed to do that. And then more importantly, again, because that's the big difference between Power Apps portals and Power Pages, is that it is really designed for the low-code experience. And I'll show you that right now. So if you're wondering, how do I get started? The first thing that you do is you would go to powerpages.microsoft.com, or you can scan the QR code here. And I'll give it a second so you can copy that or copy the QR, and then I'll switch to my screen. And while we're doing this, I'll take a look. Oh, you're muted. Philip, are you trying to talk? We have you muted, Philip.
You're still muted, Philip. Like your microphone is up.
Okay, sorry.
There you go.
I've talked to my wife and I said, be careful because the cat has been before my room.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring attention to you. But see,
No
I'm trying to
problem.
pay attention, make sure that everyone feels they're being heard. All right, so I switched to powerpages.microsoft.com, and when you get there, you have the ability to try it for free because it's in preview, right? So you can try it for free, and then all you need to do is to put your email address and to get started. Now, I've already done this, and I don't want Microsoft to flag me, and say, "Hey, why are you trying to create so many trials here?" But you get to this page here. And your first instinct might be, you know what, I'm gonna go crazy and I'm gonna create a site right here. But I wanted to point out that this is something that's new in Power Pages, is that right from there you have the concepts of the templates that are available. Now you can see there's only 5, 6 templates here. They are planning on adding some templates, and you'll see some templates say coming soon, like this one here and this one here. So they're planning on adding more templates, and I believe that these templates will continue even after we go live. But if you look at behind the scenes, like if you look at the navigation that we have here, it's clearly telling us that Microsoft is planning on adding more types of templates that you'll be able to filter through and search for them. Some of the templates that are available, you got the default out of the box, design template that's kind of boring, but allows you to build a very basic site. And you got things like a scheduling template that, if I look at preview, scheduling template that allows you to actually book appointments based on what you want to do, right? And it takes you through the whole process of booking an appointment with your bank. Of course, you could use that for anything that's not a bank, but all these templates are kind of designed to get you started with some ideas around the data model, around the layout, and things like that. And just between you and I, you can actually steal a lot of the designs that are here, right? Because there's nothing that stops you from creating a template and then downloading the template and looking at how the pages are made and using that into your own design. So you're not stuck here. These ones here are not released, but that's the first thing. Right there is that we are lowering the barrier to you getting started, because we've got some templates that kind of look cool and that hopefully will inspire you to do things. I should point out that the bank template that I've used the bank template before, and I've actually used it to integrate with Azure Communication Services, so that not only I can book an appointment with my banker, but I can actually start a Teams meeting from the website without even having Teams installed, because Azure Communication Services allows you to do that. And again, you might say, well, wait a minute, I didn't know that Azure Communication Services was supported in Power Pages. Let's just be clear. Power Pages creates a website that's got HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. That means that if you find a cool library out there that is JavaScript enabled, or even a React library, you can actually get it to build the JavaScript and HTML, and you can embed that in your site. And that's exactly what I did. And if I'm not, blacklisted from this user group, I'm happy to come back another day to show you how to do that. And then right from here, you also have the ability to learn. And so if you want to get started, this is the best way. There's like videos, there's documentation and things like that. So it's all in one place. It's all in context. And I'm hoping that a lot of the Power Platform products will start doing the same thing that Power Pages is doing, because it's all in one place as opposed to having to go to 17 different places. All right, well, let's pretend that I know what I'm talking about. And let's actually go create a new site. So I'll just go create a site. And then it'll ask me what template do I want. I'll just pick the basic template here. And now what's going to do is, I'll just call it Cologne user group. I can't even type properly today. And we can pick the languages. We'll talk about the languages shortly, because Power Pages supports multilingual, and it's always a good idea to pick the right language when you start. So it does this, and again, this is not pre-recorded. This is not, a canned demo. This is live. So hopefully this is not going to take a lot of time. But what it's doing here is that it's in the environment that is created for you for this preview, which is this one here. For me, it'll actually go and create a Dataverse schema that is designed to support Power Pages, because Power Apps Portals and Power Pages, it's all stored in Dataverse. And that can be great, because if there's something that you can do with the UI, but you know that it's all stored in Dataverse, and that they even create an app for you that you can use to manage your portal content, you can still go further, like I said, right? So if you wanted to add JavaScript, CSS, and HTML or liquid statements, or you wanted to create your own templates, you can absolutely do that behind the scenes. And I'll show you that shortly. All right, so right away, it creates a site for me. It creates a very boring site for me. Well, that's not very boring. It looks good, but we can make it more exciting than that. Before I start clicking around in the pages and stuff, I just want to point out that we've got a few things here that we can do. The first thing is the preview. And the preview allows me to quickly look at how my site's going to look, both for desktop and mobile devices. So if you actually scan this QR code right now, even though this is I just created this site, you would actually see a preview, a mobile preview of this site. And if anybody is doing that, please raise your hand so I stay there. But other than that, I will click on the preview to desktop. So it's giving me a live preview of the site, or it should. Now you'll notice that it randomly generated the URL for me. I could have picked a URL, but what I found is when I'm building test sites and dev sites and things like that, I tend not to generate a URL because I quickly run out of URLs, and then I get really upset because it doesn't have the right URL for me. We'll come back to this. All right, so Power Pages has kind of areas where we can actually edit the pages in the navigation, and we'll come back to this. We've got an area where we can control the styling for the site. And so we can actually completely override the fonts, the colors, and create a palette. And then built in to Power Pages, which is brand new, is I can actually build Dataverse tables and forms and things like that, and lists from within Power Pages. And that's something that for those of you who have used Power Apps Portals, you may remember that it's not quite the experience with Power Apps Portals. You have to jump out of the pages. You have to go build your data in Dataverse, and then you have to come back. So I have access to all the tables in my Dataverse environment. And then we'll talk about how this is protected. So I have to actually give permissions to people to access this content when I want them to access it. And then we got things like setup and things like that, which will come back because this is about permissions. This is about creating a progressive web application, so I can actually deliver that that site on a mobile page as if it was an actual app, and authentication, which we'll come back to. All right, so let's come back to the pages. And the one thing that that's kind of different here is that I have the ability to go to every. So let's see, this is our platform, Cologne. And Cologne is G-N-E, right? Not N-E. I should probably know this, but like I said, my brain is a little mushy today. So I can go and rename things. I can go change the text here. It's all very dynamic. And then one of the things that I should point out is any section that I'm clicking. So for example, I'm clicking on my heading one here. I can actually go change the style right from here. The font, the alignment, the color, and pretty much anything else. I want to make copies, move it around, and things like that. Same thing with pages for images. If I want to change the image here, I can easily upload new images. I can point to a URL. And then here, let me just change the picture to show you that I'm not lying to you. There you go. So I can quickly change the picture. And then I can go in and add more sections. Any of you who are familiar with SharePoint pages will probably recognize this, this user interface because it's really kind of the same idea here. I can add sections and columns and things like that. And again, I'll show you later if we have time how this is built behind the scenes. But every time I add a section based on the number of columns I've selected, for each container that I create for a column, I now have the ability to add one or more components. And the components I can add throughout the page are, this is right now, right? This is while we're in preview. I would imagine that in the future, we'll start seeing more components here, but I can build in images, videos, I can add space, I can embed a Power BI report, embed a list of data, embed a form, and embed an iframe. So if you want to go back to, 1990 and embed an iframe in your website, you can absolutely do that. I'm just kidding. I love iframes. All right, so this is kind of boring that I can just edit the text, but this is something, again, if you think about the experience we had before, the ability for me to go in and go completely change the look and feel and the layout without having to know HTML, without having to, to go in and edit the code, I can do that. Now, if you want to geek out and you want to edit the HTML, you can absolutely do that, right? So you can click here and you can edit the HTML, or you can see what the HTML is doing. And you'll notice that the HTML is actually leveraging some of the latest standards. For example, it uses CSS variables throughout your site so that it will, when you set a theme color somewhere, it can be used across the board. You don't have to hard code the color throughout your site. If I want to create a navigation, excuse me. If I wanted to create a navigation, you see here at the top, I have, here, let me get rid of this. At the top here, I have pages and I have subpage 1, subpage 2. This is actually automatically being built because I have a section in my navigation that says pages, subpage 1, subpage 2. So if I wanted to add a new subpage and I wanted to call it demo, then I can pick the type of pages that I want. I'll just make it a subpage. I apologize. So it should be adding it for me. There you go. Right. And again, I could go in and edit the colors and do all that stuff, but it's really easy for me to start building a site structure that's really around page content. One of the things that we can do here is, if we look at the settings of the page, I can override kind of the name and the URL or the slug for that page. But later we'll come back and we'll talk about how we can also protect pages and make sure that we can actually say, well, this page is really not intended for anonymous users. It's only for authenticated users. Okay, so But then let's look at this, because so far what I've been talking about is just editing pages. And that's really not why you would want to use Power Pages. The strength of Power Pages is that it allows you to connect to your data in Dataverse in a secure way. That's really the strength, right? If you have beautiful model-driven forms, model-driven applications in your Dataverse environment, you can actually start exposing these forms through to Power Pages. So this is an example here. I have a Contact Us page that actually has a form that is pointing to my Dataverse data behind the scenes. And so you'll see here that it's pointing to the Dataverse table called feedback, the form that comes with that Dataverse, and then the things that I can do with this. So I got some data here, and I'm going to go click around what I want to do when I submit. So for example, if I wanted to display a message, or I wanted to redirect you to a page or redirect you to a URL based on the things that you filled in, or a CAPTCHA that makes sure that bots are not able to go in and, on an anonymous site, the bots are not able to go in and create content and spam you. We can do that here. But how did I build this form? Well, if I go to my data, you'll see that it already knows that the tables that are used inside the site is the feedback table. And you'll see that I've already started to create some tests here. But if I look at the forms that I have in my Dataverse, and I look at the simple Contact Us form, this should look very familiar. And while it's loading this, I'm going to go back to the preview, and I'm going to show you the Contact Us form. And if the demo gods are with me, we should see that there's a correlation between, come on. Of course, it's giving me a hard time now because I'm trying to show this to you. There you go. So I have the fill in your details, name, email, subject, message. And then on this side here, if I zoom in a little bit, I got fill in details, name, email, subject, message. Hey, this is pretty cool. So if I wanted to change this form here, I can actually just change the form in Dataverse. And again, I'm using the web interface that's with Power Pages, but I could actually go back. If you're really comfortable with just using Power Apps to build your model-driven apps, you can absolutely go do that right there. This is pretty powerful, right? Because again, you don't need to be an expert in HTML. You can build, you can mark, for example, you'll see here that the subject field is marked as mandatory, and we can do all that here. But let's go back a little bit here. It doesn't stop there. If I wanted to create a new table to support any kind of infrastructure I want, again, this is built on Dataverse. So you can actually build a table the same way you would in a Dataverse environment. I'm not going to do that because I suspect that my typing is going to be horrendous today. Or I can use the tables that are already available in my Dataverse environment for this Power Pages. So you can see again, there's tons of tables here that are available. If you're connecting to a Dynamics environment, you would actually also have the Dynamics tables that are available to you. This is great, right? Because I can just take a table that I want to use and put it into my Power Pages environment. But one thing we need to think about is, well, what about, I don't want people to be able to see other people's stuff, right? So I'll use an example here. I work with one of the largest Canadian food retailer and private label, actually the world's private label manufacturer. And they used to do exactly what we talked about, where they used to license Power Apps for their vendors and their suppliers. And they used to give them a license to be able to go into their Dataverse and update the data. So what we did instead is we created the Power Pages, and we connected to the data that was relevant to the suppliers. Now, when we did this, one of the things that we did is we went to the permissions and we set up permissions for that table. So you see here that, and this might look familiar because this is very similar to when you create a role in Dataverse, but we went to a table that we wanted the suppliers to use, and we actually set up the permissions. So when you set up the permissions, you can actually say, you give it a name. And by the way, I would always recommend that when you give a name to your permissions, you make sure that it's a very easy to remember permission. Don't use, PRM underscore blah, blah, blah. This is still supposed to be a maker platform. Make sure that everything you do is easy to read and user-friendly. But this is what I wanted to show you, is that if you pick an access type that's different than global, global means that everyone has access to everything in that Dataverse environment. Now, in this case, what I'm doing is I'm saying the feedback table, everyone, administrators, anonymous users, and authenticated users can create. They can't read, they can't delete, they can't write anybody else's things, but they can still put new records in the table, and everyone has permission to do this. But if I wanted to, I could actually switch this to say, I want only people to have access to things that are related to them as a contact. Because when you log in to a Power Pages site, you're actually authenticated against your contact record that's created for you. And so the cool thing about this now, and if I had a relationship that was based on, oh, see, I have one. If I wanted to see, for example, I want to see only, actually, let me just do this. Let me go crazy here. Let me add a new permission, and I'll say view my own feedback. Again, I said it was going to be hard for me to type today. I'll pick the feedback table, and I'll say here that I want me to only see feedback that have a contact relationship. And here I'll pick, it automatically filters the things that are associated to a contact entity. And see here we have one that says this is the contact created by. So then what this is doing here is it's going to say that, the permission I'm going to apply is only going to be available for the feedback records that were created by this person. And what I'll do here is I'll say read, and maybe I can say write, right? So I have the ability now to view my feedback and update my feedback, but I can only see my own feedback. I can't see, I can't see other people's permissions, or sorry, records. And then one of the things that you do here is you create roles. And we'll probably run out of time today to talk about roles, but one of the things I can do here is I can create specific roles. If you think about, again, the Fernando's scenario with people that are working in a factory floor, or my suppliers for my large retailer, I might have a supplier role that is very specific to what a supplier can do. And I might have a manager of suppliers who maybe represents all the suppliers in one vendor's organization, and they can oversee, not just their own records, but the records of anybody that works in the same company as them. But in this case, I have these default roles. I got the administrators, the anonymous users, and authenticated users. Well, the only way that I can see my own records is obviously if I'm authenticated. So I'll just use the authenticated user role. And I'll click save. Now, if your table had relationships, so if you had notes and attachments, or lookup values, or list of people associated to this thing, you'll notice that when I created my permission here, I also had the ability to create child permissions. So this is a great way to, again, if I had attachments, I could create permissions to view my own attachments, and so on and so forth. And that includes uploading documents and things like that, which is great. Okay, so now I've actually created permissions that allows me to see my own feedback. I've created permissions that allow me to create feedback without being authenticated. But what if I wanted to, just for fun, I wanted to do what I said, where I want to see all the feedback for anybody that works for my company, right? So this is, again, a third-party company, not your company, but a company that is whatever, a supplier that works with you. And, Contoso Inc. is the supplier, and they have 5 vendors that are connecting to your system. And you want to be able to see all the records that those 5 vendors are creating. You could actually do that. So I could say view my company feedback. I'll pick the same table again. It probably works better if I type. And then what I'll say here is I'll say account access. So if you remember in Dataverse, right, a contact is a person and an account is a company. And usually a contact reports to a company or works for a company or works for an account. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying anybody that is associated to my company, because the contact that created the feedback works for the account record, I want to be able to do that. No, it's not going to let me do that because I didn't create an account relationship, but I think you can see the idea here. And there was one more type of contact here, access, which is self. And this is the ability for me to update my own information about things. So think about updating my profile, updating my preferences, and things like that. I can only update my own things. All right. So I could spend hours and hours on permissions. I suspect that it's probably not the most exciting thing, but what I want to make sure here that we understand is that you should pay attention to permissions, because I've seen a lot of people creating beautiful portals and things like that, and then they open all their content to everybody. You want to make sure that you always give the least privilege as possible to your users of the portal. And you do that through permissions. But with permissions comes identity. If I want to have permissions, I should probably be able to log in. So by default, you'll notice that, when my site got created, it allows me to do local sign-in, where it's actually using the contacts table to create a record for me as a potential user. And it automatically also adds Azure Active Directory for your Active Directory domain. But if you wanted to add other authentication mechanisms for your site, you can see there's already some that are pre-configured for you. Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, Twitter, Microsoft, and your own B2C Azure Active Directory. Those are the ones that are available for you, and you just need to click on Configure and follow the wizard to configure it. I'm not going to do that because it can be very boring to watch me do that. But you can also add your own identity providers. So if you had, and Fernando, I think we were talking about earlier, you have a database for payroll, right? So if they provide OpenID, SAML, or Federation authentication, you can actually use that system as a way to authenticate your users to your portal. So now this is great because you can actually have employees that are using your portal that are not given an Azure Active Directory user ID, but they are somehow authenticated through another system, another repository. I'll skip that here. And then one of the things I can do with authentication is I can control whether I want external logins, like things like, we said Google and Facebook and stuff like that. So I could disable that, whether I want to allow people to register themselves or not, and whether I force a unique email address when people are registering. And so with those combinations, if I go back to my preview page, where did I put my preview page? There you go. This is my preview page. When I click on sign in here, the first thing it'll do is it'll ask me to do, again, we've enabled local sign in, and we've enabled external sign in, which is Azure AD. So it's automatically showing me those options when I log in. And because I've already enabled register, I have the ability for me to register. And again, I can register using the 2 authentication providers you have. So this is important because depending on what you configure, these pages will automatically reflect what you set up. So if I automatically had only Azure AD, no registrate, no local sign-in, it would probably just directly go take me to log in, right? There's another option here, which is redeeming invitations. And this is probably one of the things that people ignore, and it's really powerful. Because imagine, again, we're talking about Fernando's example, or we're talking about my customer's example, where I have hundreds, if not thousands of people that I want to allow to log into the portal, but I don't want them to have to go create their own account. This is Dataverse behind the scene. So I could use a Power Automate flow, I can use a data flow, I could use a CSV to import a ton of contacts and generate an invitation code. And then send that invitation code to all the participants and say, hey, click on this link and we'll automatically associate your credentials with this contact entity. This is a great way to get people started. Trust me, when you have like a customer that's got millions of records, last thing you want to do is to have millions of people going and create their own user ID. I'll see if I signed in. Let me try again. If not, I'll skip the whole sign-in thing. And again, I have a get out of jail card because I have COVID. I'm planning on using that for the rest of the week. Okay, so now what we've done, we've gone in, we've set up permissions for tables, we've connected to tables, we've set up identity so we can actually allow people to register, to log in, and things like that. Let's go back to the styling. So the styling, and again, we're doing okay for time? Not going to get the...
Yeah, I guess we are good in time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I don't see any raised hands, so that's good. And then I'll make sure to cover the questions, by the way. Okay, so you'll see that in the styling area, I have some predefined styles. Now, this is Microsoft. Their idea of creating exciting styles is not always the most exciting, but it's a good starting point, right? You can go in if you wanted to. If my friend David Warner was still here, he would love that I'm picking purple for him. But you can pick the themes, and then you can use the preview here to see what the pages are going to look like. So this is what the pages are going to look like if I pick this theme, right? And I can just move around, pick another theme, and preview it. Nothing really that excites me here, but I'll pick maybe the blue one. There you go. Okay, now the other thing that I can do is all these color palettes here, I can actually predefine my own color palette. So I can use HTML hex codes, I can use RGB alpha, or I can just go edit existing colors. So for example, this is the call to action one, which I suspect is probably going to be this one here. Let's see what happens. Yeah, see? No, I don't like that, so I'm just going to discard my changes. But here I could go in and completely change the look and feel of my site. Come on, what color did I pick? The blue one. I can change the look and feel of my site, and I can control things like the background, the fonts, and the fonts for everything. So you don't want boring Arial, you want to change your font. You can actually do that in one place. And this is something that if you've used Power Apps portals before, the experience was not quite there before, right? You had to know CSS. And in fact, you had to know SCSS probably if you wanted to be able to do this. So now here I can actually control. So for example, the heading here, heading 2, heading 3, and so on and so forth. I can go and change all these styles directly, as well as the button colors. the secondary button colors, all the links on the page, the sections, and the spacing. This is great. You have the ability to do all this stuff. Now, maybe on a future session, I'll show you how you can even go in deeper than that and completely customize this. So if you have your own CSS that you're already using for your company, and you find that this is limiting for you, I can show you how you can go in and make those changes. But I like the blue color. I'll use the blue color here. Okay, so now we've shown you how I can enter data by dropping a form. I've shown you how I can protect things. We've talked about the page settings and things like that. So right here, page settings, right? But let's look at this for a second. You'll see that I have on my table, I have a permission. And so I can actually control the permissions from here as well. And this is great because if you're just getting started to using Power Pages, you might not be familiar with, oh, I need to go to permissions on the tables and blah, blah, blah. Everything is always in context. And this is huge if you're learning about Power Pages, the ability to understand, okay, well, people are reporting that they can't create a new feedback. Well, you probably want to come here and test the permissions, right? But what if I wanted to show you your feedback? Let's create, let's create a new table here, a new page, sorry. We will call it this one. We'll call it my feedback. And then normally, if I was doing this for real, I would go update the content here and put some fluffy text. But for now, I'll just add a one column section. And then I'll add a list. And right away, it's going to ask me, where's the table, where's the data coming from? So I'll pick the feedback table again. It's going to look at the views that are available to me, right? So I could say all feedback or whatever. Normally what I would do, by the way, is when I'm creating a Power Pages data, I'll create a view that's specifically for that Power Pages so that because if I pick, let's say, the active feedback view, and some brilliant person comes into my Dataverse environment and says, oh, you know what, the active feedback, the default active feedback, I want to change it. They don't actually know that they're affecting my portal, right? So I'll usually create a specific form that is for Power Pages. I'll create a specific view so that I don't have to worry about anything, anybody messing my content. And then that's it. I just created a list here. Now, it's going to pick the things that the views, and it's automatically going to pick the columns. And then what we have the ability to do here, depending on if I click this again, we've already viewed the permissions. But one of the things that I can do with this now is I could have some crazy ideas. Like, for example, I want to allow search. I want to limit the number of items. Or I want to allow people to, again, only if they have permissions, to create, right? And I can actually have it automatically pick the form that I want. I want people to view the details. And then for each one of those, what I could do is I could actually go to a form that's built in. I could go to a web page if I want to have a separate page for viewing details, creating contacts, and stuff like that. In fact, I know that I have I have a contact us page, so I'm going to switch the create record to the contact us page. The view detail, I'm just going to embed a form in the page, edit the record. We'll see where we want to do. We'll just embed the same form here, and I don't want to delete records. So now it's going to render all that stuff for me. Now there you go. And you see now I have the create button, I have the search functionality, all that stuff. That's all built in. Now you might ask, and in fact, I want to switch to the questions before we wrap up here, because you might ask, well, how is the security done for this? Like, does that mean I need to give every user access to my Dataverse environment. When you set up a Power Apps portal or Power Pages, it goes in Azure AD and it creates a security principal for you. So client ID, client secret. So this is not a user. This is kind of a service principal that is given the least privilege possible to act on behalf of the user. So that means that even if I found a way to hack through this page, right? I found an exploit or something like that. The worst that Power Pages will do is will only do what my permissions have set up to do. So for example, if we said that the current user can only see their feedback, or they can create feedback, doesn't matter if I use the pages or if I somehow find the web API call that's being made, the AJAX call that's being made, I'm never going to be able to do anything but what the service principal is able to do on my behalf. And that's really, really important. Now, with that, we have to remember, because I think last summer, there was a little panic moment where people were like, oh my God, Power Apps Photos is exposing all my data. Well, yeah, because people were going in and they were saying, oh, enable, all data to be shown through my Power Apps portals. So you will get the results that you set it up for, and you have to be really conscientious of that. All right, I could probably go on for hours and hours, but let's see, we've got about 15 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we're covering all the questions, and I'll have to switch to the questions. So give me a second, excuse me. Let's find those questions.
We have like 5 questions in total. I don't know if you can actually see all of them. Otherwise, I will just read them out.
So is there some sort of ALM best practices when developing the pages? That's a beautiful question. So yes, you can actually set up your Power Pages to actually integrate with Azure DevOps or GitHub, so that what you could do here is, I've shown you how to edit everything manually, but what if behind the scenes you want to change the CSS, you want to change the JavaScript, the layout and things like that? The way to do this would be to edit the code behind the pages. And in fact, I'll show you that. So if you go to this thing here, and by the way, we can trigger workflows from within Power Pages. I didn't talk about that. But this thing here is like the behind the scenes view of your portal. And again, I know I use the word portal and Power Pages interchangeably, but let's just remember that Power Pages is really built on top of Power Apps portals. So everything that I showed you in a very user-friendly way, right? Your pages, your styles, your data, and everything is all actually shown here behind the scenes. Now, this might be a little overwhelming at first, but here you have access to everything. So, for example, if you're wondering, like the templates that we're using for blank pages and sub-content pages and stuff like that, those are all created in here. And I can actually, I'll just pick one randomly here, but I can go in and I can change the source of that through the web interface. But again, we talked about editing the HTML and the liquid statement and everything through a web page is probably not the best experience. If you want to use Visual Studio Code to edit, you're going to have the syntax highlighting, you're going to have all that stuff. So you want to do that. But one of the things that you'll be able to do then is if you connected your site to a GitHub or Azure DevOps, you'll be able to actually kind of submit your changes. And, if you want to use the concept of a pull request or releases, you can use that to actually, once the changes are made, to actually push the changes into your production site, right? So you're not editing your live site. You're able to actually use the proper application lifecycle management to push that in. There's lots of ways to do this, and I'm sure that my friend Nikita here is dying to unmute to talk about this, but you can use, if you don't want to use the full-on ALM integration in DevOps, you can use the Power App CLI. The Power App CLI allows you to, there's a command called pack PA portal download and pack PA portal upload that allows you to make a copy of all this code that I showed you onto your machine, make the changes using Visual Studio Code or your favorite editor, and then pack PA portal upload to upload it back. Or you can use that to store your code into Azure DevOps. If you want to use ALM integration, you can add the Power Platform, depending on what platform you're using, the pipeline components or the workflow actions in DevOps and GitHub to actually go get the content from your site and go publish your content. Again, I'm not doing it justice because I'm trying to cover things really quickly, but it's definitely possible. And if you'd like me to do a session specifically on that, I would be more than happy to do that. So hopefully, Marvin, it covers your question. What are the security options for Power Pages when it comes to DDoS? Aha, okay. So all the Power Platform is built on top of Azure. And so it inherently leverages the Azure protection, right? So the built-in protection for denial of service and things like that are built in. But if you had specific requirements, I have a client from a Northern Territory government, they were getting hacked all the time, right? They were getting denial of service and things like that, and they had to start building custom rules with like Azure Sentinel and things like that to be able to stop denial of service. You can do that. You can actually use your Azure WAF Web Application Firewall to protect your Power Pages and add your own specific rules, right? So if you wanted to put IP restrictions, you wanted to put, any other rules that you wanted to build based on what device they're using, where they're coming in, and things like that, you can absolutely do that. But if you choose not to do that, just know that your Power Pages site is still protected by the built-in Azure protection. Next question. Is there a possibility to allow partner relationship management without a dynamic instance? This is recorded, right? So if you think about it, the partner relationship management that's built into Dynamics is built on Dataverse. And the tables that are built in Dataverse are not magical tables. They're just regular tables. So if you chose to implement your own data model that mimics the partner relationship management, you could absolutely do that. Of course, Dynamics gives you a lot more functionality, but if you're just trying to use a subset of that, you could do that. And in fact, the majority of the Dataverse schema is already published out there. So if you just search for Dataverse schema, I'm sure that you'll find all the table structure and how they're built. And that would be my trick. Now, I never told you that, even though this is recorded. No, again, the Dataverse is really intended to be a starting point for you, right? And we want you to make sure that you're using the platform for the purpose for which you need it. And if it requires you to build your own schema inspired by someone else's schema, you can absolutely do that, right? So hopefully that answers your question. And I only see 5. Oh, okay. Let me just see all the questions here.
Do you like, or should I read them out to you?
Sure, yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Like the next question is license cost involved in Power Pages. Is it similar to Power Apps portals?
Yeah. The licensing has not been announced yet, and I'm not even aware of the licensing. But because Power Pages is currently in preview, if you're deciding to license your Power Pages, you're going to be using the Power Apps Portal license model. Again, one thing that I want to make clear, because this is a very sensitive subject, right? I think everyone will agree that at first, when you look at Power Pages or Power Apps Portal licensing, you might be like, "Ooh, very expensive." Just understand that depending on how you license, you also have built-in licenses. So if you're using Dynamics, for example, you have built-in licenses that you can use. You can kind of leverage for all your existing licenses, for all your current users that are paid for with Dynamics and Dataverse. You do get some license allocation for Power Pages and Power Apps Portal. Where you have to think about your cost is if you say, well, okay, I have whatever. One of my client has thousands. They have about 75,000 users. And so with those 75,000, they already have a license for logging in through Power Pages. But you might need additional licenses for people who are not licensed, your partners, your vendors, and things like that. And then you would want to get extra licenses. The licenses are based on page views. So you can just calculate the number of people that are coming in. That's not active, it's page visits or active visits. Again, Nikita, I may need you to lend me your brain here because my brain is mush. But it's basically, you calculate how many people will be visiting your site on a daily basis, and you can license according to that. Little trick, by the way, if you ever notice that, well, my site is getting really slow, like it's not as fast as it used to be, it could just be that you're actually having more visits than you're actually licensed for, and your portal, your pages are being throttled again because you're overusing the allocation. I know I'm not answering the question because the answer is it'll stay tuned until when Power Pages is released officially, it becomes GA for the most up-to-date license. But I hope that we'll see some cool stuff with licensing in the future. And then we have one more question, I believe, right?
Yeah, one more. I guess there's one more question that came in. Oh no, it's like just some well wishes to you. The last question is, we will start the development in September on Power Apps portals for a go live around April 23. As Pages is in preview, we will keep working with portals. Is this a wise decision, and will there be migration work to be done afterwards? Will this mean the Power Apps portals interface will improve rapidly as well?
And I don't know if Nikita wants to chime in because I know he and I are very opinionated about things like that. But I personally would say jump in. It's not like Microsoft is going to say, we changed our mind. We're not going to do Power Pages, right? We know that it's going to Power Pages, and we know that it's in preview, and we know that it's built on top of Power Apps portals. So if I were you, I would say get started with using Power Pages. Again, I'm sure that in future revisions of Power Pages, there's going to be a huge schema change and data model change. But for now, both Power Pages and Power Apps portals really leverage the same schema. So there's really no disadvantage to use Power Pages. Again, understand that if there's something that Power Pages doesn't do, because as we all know, right, in Power Platform, the Microsoft team sometimes they'll leave some legacy pages somewhere. Like remember the classic, form designer versus the modern form designer and things like that. So if you get to something that's in Power Pages that's not there for you, you still have the ability to go to the classic experience, which is the Power Apps portal editing, which is what I showed you earlier. So I don't think you're limited personally. Nikita, do you have anything else to add?
So I posed a question, so I'll maybe go further into that. So if I understand correctly, so now the licensing allows for one portal per environment, and then if we choose Power Pages per environment, I believe it will be the same system, correct?
Yeah.
So if we use Power Pages, actually we still have the portal management app, and we can still use all the other features as well to change our Power Power Apps portal.
Yeah. So if you wanted to change the templates behind the scenes, the page layouts, things like that, you can absolutely do that. And you should be able to create more than one portal per environment now. That's something that Microsoft snuck in recently. Well, not so recently, but yeah, I wouldn't say that you're limited here. I would start with create a Power Pages site. Use all the low code, no code features that you're looking for because you can quickly go in, as you saw. I went in, quickly changed the style, the names of the company, the logos and colors and stuff like that. Drop the data and everything. And then once you've reached the limits of what you can do using the low code experience, you can absolutely go into the portal management behind the scenes and start adding advanced functionality. So if you wanted to have, I don't know, conditional rendering of records in a list, you could absolutely do that using Liquid, HTML, and CSS. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, so if I understand well, actually there's a Power Apps portal which is created with a new UI over it, but actually all the Power Apps portal interfaces are still also provisioned.
Absolutely.
The runtime is the same. Sorry, I didn't realize I was on double mute. The runtime is the same. So there's a new studio experience. So being able to create content is now faster. The UI demo that when Hugo was showing us layout, right, or adding these sections and able to style and background, there are things you could have done if you knew more HTML.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change how it's done. It's same HTML going to page content or into a content snippet that you would have before. The new studio doesn't let you suddenly lay out a form or change the look and feel of your list or configure the filter on the list in a new magical way. I'm sad to give you that news, right? There's no feature changes that Power Pages brings to the outcome of the portal. Now, there are feature changes to the Power Apps portal, though, which apply to the Power Pages portal, they're in the release plan, right? So I can't access the chat, but if you go in your web browser and type in 2022 release plan Power App portal, you should get a top hit there, and that's going to give you the release details for things like image column support, file column support coming in August. Yeah, thanks, Hugo. And other future considerations like custom actions coming to Portal Web API. Those are actually runtime features, and you'll be able to access both of them. So creating a site with Power Pages today, the benefit is you actually get a better maker experience. The site and the web app that you create is tagged. You can't go back to the old studio to edit it, but you can always go back to PMA, right, which is Portal Management App, which is the exact same PMA between Power Apps and Power Pages. And you can always use PathCLI to download that representation locally and work on the content. But the studio creates the same output. Yeah, so here are the important things coming for Power App portals that are yet to actually release, and they impact both. So if I'm making a decision, going back to your original question, start with Power Pages, convert the environment from trial to production, assign it licensing, obviously, if you're going to go live on it. But the outcome, the runtime is the same. Yeah, so file column coming in August, right? Support for image column is there now. Literally, I think there's supposed to be a blog, if there wasn't already, kind of giving you the final, what that looks like. Yes, there was, with profile pages, profile image, and things like that. Dataverse search integration was pretty nice, right? And some of these release plans link you to the actual docs, but it is all documented. Some of the documentation right now, we're working on it, is linked to the Power Apps portal. So go to Power Apps portal documentation for some of these features, right? The most exciting one for makers is going to be the custom action, right? So if you're a pro, for pro developer teams, the custom action support is really thrilling. A custom action in Dataverse allows you to write a C# event handler that is then unbound to the traditional data-triggered scope of a record in Dataverse. So what that'll provide you to do is to write server-side logic in Dataverse, C#, right? It's basically a plugin, right? To take inputs and outputs, and then have the Portal Web API on top of it to secure that. Now it's going to start as a preview. I expect that the GA will probably be the next season, right? We won't see the next release plan until when is it? July? Forget when. Anyways, we do release planning twice a year for our October and April announcements. So there should be a new one, and the next season will likely be a GA, I'd imagine, in 2023 for that feature. Support for admin actions. If you don't mind clicking on that one to actually go into the details of it. So not audit logging, go into support for portal actions admin APIs.
This
The
was
most
right.
thrilling part of this one is an ability to create a portal and list the portal. So we can now automate creation of portals. So if you are going to be enabling governance and maker growth at larger organizations and enabling those, this will be thrilling to finally be able to provision the portal through API automation.
So imagine instead of allowing someone to create a portal or a Power Pages site automatically, they could request using an app that you built or even using the COE components. And then when you approve it, you could choose to create it on their behalf, which is huge.
Yeah. So we will definitely implement this as part of the COE starter kit. So for those of you who are in Power Platform governance and care about that kind of stuff, COE starter kit is a great place to start to build. It's a big Power App sample to build your own automation. Power Pages is a resident. We're gonna release in July the renaming. It's gonna say portals right now if you download it. But we allow you to give you inventory. How we get that inventory is we look at every Power Platform environment that you have, go look inside of the Dataverse, see if there's a website table, and we're going to give you the inventory and a couple really cool things out of it. The problem with it is we're giving you the website records. So we're going to give you that one website you created 6 years ago. We don't know if it's actually still running, right? So there's a little bit of a problem. This admin API roadmap is going to allow us to then link it and then say, hey, it was created by Nikita 6 years ago, but it's not connected to a running host. So it doesn't matter what we found about it, but it'll give you as an admin a little bit better. So we'll wire up what we can with this once this is GA. I don't think we'll wire it up when it's preview. We might have a sample elsewhere sitting, but we'll definitely be back and talking about this in the Power Pages community. And if you care about those things, definitely check it out. Yeah.
And I want to jump in. You talked about custom APIs.
Yeah, let's go back to custom actions.
Because the cool thing here, so far everything I've shown you was connecting to Dataverse data, and it's using a service principal that's only allowed to connect to Dataverse data. Now, again, you could trigger Power Automate workflows by tying it to a trigger of when a record is created, when a record is modified. But what if I wanted to integrate with something else? I'll give you an example because it's something I've actively worked on. What if I wanted to connect to Microsoft Bookings, right, to book appointments? I don't want to expose the Bookings API from the client side because I don't want people to be able to just go in and start calling it. I want Bookings to be called using a graph call behind the scenes. And so therein lies the problem is that, well, I don't want that stuff to be on the client. I want it to be on the server. I could actually wrap a C# kind of plugin. I had to think the word here. I could write a C# plugin, create a custom API that calls that plugin, and then the plugin could go in and get me the available calls, or go, I don't know, create a team in Teams, or do whatever I need to do using Graph or using any other C# component. And that's where it becomes really powerful. Again, I'm oversimplifying. You'd want to set up the principal to have access to do all that stuff, but it's absolutely something that you can do. And this is really, when I talked about how once you've reached the limits of what Power Pages can do, you're just starting. That's a great example of that, right? Because I'm not just bound to my Dataverse data. I can leverage the rich data ecosystem that I have internally to access my legacy systems and things like that. Again, I can also use things like virtual tables and data flows and things like that as well. But you know, I think we're barely scratching the surface in terms of what Power Pages can do.
I have only 2 questions.
But they're in 27 parts.
Yeah, it's complicated. The first question is about the Power BI add-in. Is this Power BI embedded, or must I publish to web a report and embed this report URL?
Hugo, I can take this one. It's a passion
Thank you.
topic
Yeah.
of mine. Yeah, so we actually support all 3. Publish to web, pretty useless to be honest,
Yeah.
right? Unless you really have a fully anonymous report that you want to publish and allow your consumers to filter it, you're probably just going to keep it as is and do publish, which frankly is just kind of an iframe, right? So we do that one, but you can do that one anywhere, and the value is pretty low. We also support for employee internally facing Azure AD tenant users. You can do Azure AD, but the better one is the Power BI embedded. Now,
Okay.
caveat, requires Power BI premium capacity. Pretty pricey to get started. But if you have that, the powerful engine that you have now is no matter which identity provider your external user comes in as, you can use Power BI embedded. We use the Power BI embedded SDK ourselves. It's all server side, which now means nobody's stealing my stuff. And we passing server side the username of your user. So when you do role level security with Power BI embedded, you can do granular, safe, server side driven security down to your Power BI embedded report, and through DAX run filtering. So you're going to get the username parameter, and you're going to get the actual values right back linked through the relationships in your table. So when Hugo and Nikita log in, you have the contact table. We're going to get the username column passed to you with the username object. You're going to filter down the contact table on the username. It's going to filter the contact table to just Hugo or Nikita, depending on who logged in, runtime, server side. And then if you have the link from the contact table to the account, it's going to, Nikita and Hugo are both linked to Microsoft. It's going to do Microsoft and then go to your orders table, and your order table can come in from SAP. And now you have an SAP safe, secure, embedded Power BI report sitting there. Now, these are logged on authenticated scenarios, obviously, if you needed to produce that. So very like the low code where the Power Pages is the quickest low code solution to external facing BI when used in combination with Power BI embedded and Power BI embedded capacity.
Okay,
Thank you.
sounds good.
And then, Wouter, you have a question? Or is it Voot again? I know you told me your name. I'm sorry I butchered it.
That's quite okay. I had another 2 questions. We would like to have a development environment, a QA environment, and then a production environment. Now, what we thought of was that we would create 3 actual environments inside Power Apps, and then each has its portal, and there is a migration tool. Now, do we need to license all 3 environments, as the sandbox mode only lasts for 30 days?
Yeah, normally when I do this, I'll do it as a sandbox for the dev and QA. Nikita, remind me while
Yeah,
we're
let me just maybe from environment strategy, right? So let's separate portals and environment strategy. Environment strategy is you should have an environment with Dataverse, dev, test, and prod. Dev and test will be sandbox environment type in Power Platform, and then your production should be production. There's actually no physical difference between them. The physical difference between production and sandbox Dataverse environments is that we remove the button for you to delete the environment until you convert it back to sandbox. So we just prevent you from deleting it. It's not more performant. It's not hosted on different servers or anything else. So Dataverse environments, sandbox and production are the same. So if anybody ever told you it'll be faster in production, run away. They've never done a production large scale deployment. It is not faster in production. In fact, it'll probably be slower with more data. So portals. When you start a portal, by default, all portals start as a trial. There is a physical difference between a trial and a production portal. When you convert from trial is only one instance of the portal. When you create it to production, now we'll actually have a regional hot backup pair, regional pair. That's a hot backup, which means if for some reason one of our geos goes down at Microsoft, super rare, by the way, we'll have a hot backup to relay you to. Again, now it will maybe marginally make your portal run faster, but it actually wouldn't. What makes your portal run faster? Not your optimization and design and being just a good designer with how you design your data interactions and things like that. That impacts more of your portal performance than anything else. Is actually a transactional load you set up in Dataverse. So that fetch retrieve plugin, forget those, please. Right? When you do a synchronous transaction holding event on your case create or that contact form that we have on the portal, if you have a plugin holding that transaction, that's who's making your portal slow. Make that an asynchronous transaction if it has nothing to do with what the portal user needs, or exit that business logic as fast as possible when you see that the system user made the data change, because all changes in Dataverse done from portal are run by system user. So it's a pretty good if else exit condition branch in your plugins to exit the Dataverse plugin if you know a portal is making that transaction and what you're about to do has nothing to do with portals for that transaction. So definitely avoid that. So if you have a high demanding portal, how do I make sure it performs well? Well, you buy the capacity in accordance with what that load is. So you license it correctly, and you actually assign that portal capacity. Assigning the portal capacity to the portal will signal to our servers to horizontally scale up to that capacity. If you don't assign licensing capacity, we don't have max scalar set on your web application, which means when you have a surge or a licensing like event, we don't know and can't scale you up because you haven't purchased and assigned that. Now, do we turn away users? No, but if you had a portal and had 100 logins assigned to it, and now you're in 1,000, thousands, 10,000 logins, we still let users in. They're just not going to be running as fast because it doesn't have as many horizontal web apps to assign to it. So that's important. That dropdown in portal admin, where you declare if it's a developer instance, UAT instance, or production instance, it's a label we don't use, and you probably don't even care for. So we'll probably take it out next year, next release, but it doesn't actually signal anything else. Again, there's nothing you can do to make your portal run faster, but if you're running at scale, you should be buying and assigning licenses to make sure that we scale you up to your purchased capacity.
Now, to add to that, if you're switching between environments, one thing that we should point out is if you're making changes to your Dataverse data, you should make sure that you're making your changes through a solution. So it makes it easy for you to export the solution and import the solution. But as of now, and that's the same whether it's Power Pages or Power Apps portals, the pages content or your site content itself is not included in the solution. So you would want to use the PAC CLI, the Power Platform CLI command line interface to do a PAC PA portal download to download the web content, and then PAC PA portal upload. So again, moving your portal from dev to QA would consist of exporting and importing the solution and doing PAC PA portal download, PAC PA portal upload. And of course, when you upload it to Production, you only want to upload the same version that you exported in the first place. Otherwise, you're invalidating your test. So you do a PAC-Peer portal upload, and you would upload your solution and publish your solution. Hopefully that covers your question.
So if I understand well, we can, and of course, we license our production environment, and the test and development environments, we can just set them as production and do not license them.
So, can or should? So here's a slide I've helped put together to answer that. Technically, you should assign licensing to all of your environments. So running on trials is discouraged because trials run out and do that, right? If you're a super on the budget, non-for-profit organization, well, talk to your Microsoft team and get a licensing discount, right? Don't run trials. I know one organization that I've helped at a hackathon build something. They're like, well, we'll just run the dev and test and trial. I'm like, fantastic. So what are you going to do next time you need to make a change? You're going to create a portal again, run it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, their business user is not going to know how to do that. Could you train them? Sure. Probably not a good idea in most real large organizations. The Power Pages capacity compared to Dynamics 365 add-on is way cheaper, because you would have had to buy 4 500,000 transaction Dynamics 365 add-on packs in this environment here. This right here is cheaper to buy 4 login packs and 2 page view packs to run this versus 4. This is like $2,000 a month, like full bear retail, right? Versus a lot cheaper on Power Pages add-on capacity. So it's called Power Apps Page Views and Power Apps Login. So just be aware that you do have minimums. Can you run the portal without assigning licenses? Yes, it's literally an error state. It shouldn't happen.
But I will personally find you and make you pay.
Yeah, no, like, to be honest, you clicking convert from trial to production checks no licensing today. It requires a developer to go invest time to go catch you and do that and prevent that button from working. I'm hearing that it at least checks if you even have portals SKUs in your tenant. If you don't, I don't think it works. So you should at least have some SKUs for portals, but there's some scenarios where there's probably some reasons why that doesn't actually limit you. The only example here where you don't need to buy anything and you can still run a portal is if you have a fully internal facing portal. What does that mean? Your homepage is set to blocked, as in require logon, and your identity provider is set to default to be Azure AD, the default one within your primary tenant, which means all of your users are Azure AD users from your primary tenant. At that point in current licensing, you're actually required to license them in the Power App. So a portal is not cheaper to run to address your employees. So if you want cheap Dataverse experiences, there is no hack for it. Portals is not it for now, right?
Yep.
Like we just don't have like when you look at licensing for internal employees, they need a Power App. The good news is you can do per app plan. You can do the Azure backed plan works for internal facing employees. So if you assign an Azure backed pay as you go to that environment and use your Azure meter for it, your employee facing portal will be now in your Azure bill. No new announcements about any new licensing for Power Pages specific licensing because the product is not GA. So until the product is GA, you wouldn't even see anything mentioned about Power Pages and licensing. So if you have to renew your customer or go live with your customer, you can't buy a SKU that doesn't exist.
And I can speak from experience because I have worked with lots of teams that tried to, I don't want to say cheat the system because they really didn't get any benefit from it, but they were trying to go in trial mode. I can guarantee you that the day you're trying to do a demo to the executives, that's the day that the trial environment expires. It's like almost like it can sense it. So last thing you want to do is lose your environment every 30 days or lose your environment when it's important. Again, talk to your Microsoft reps for them to help you with getting the proper license. And
Yep.
I think
And we also do know that some customers on projects that you're delivering will buy the licensing at go live.
Yeah.
Please open a support ticket, work with us. If you have a meaningful portal that's going to go live and your customer says they'll buy licensing on day one, by the time they buy licensing, first of all, it takes a week to procure, week to get in, at least, at best, and then you're going to be running on one instance of a portal, not horizontally scaling to their fun surge and welcome emails that they're sending everybody. Please file a support ticket, tell us what's happening, and have us pre-scale you. With proof, obviously, that the customer is actually intending to buy the licensing, because what we rather not want you do is go live on the portal that doesn't have enough capacity to scale up, and you look bad, we look bad, everybody's screaming, nobody's happy. So we've seen that, it happens, it's not great. Also, load testing, don't load test the trial, it's not going to load test well. At least convert it to production, and if you do need to load test, file a support ticket, says, hey, I'm load testing, the customer hasn't purchased their licensing, but like we're going to get these many login packs. Could you please assign us amicable capacity so we can do our load test on an infrastructure that's actually going to scale up to it?
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point. I know we've gone way over the time here, but I'm happy to continue answering questions. But Microsoft is always willing to work with you to ultimately, Microsoft is not a charity, right? At some point, they'll want to make sure that they are covering their licenses. But if there's a common thing that Nikita and I are here to do is to make sure that we're helping the customers be successful. And you might not know that you can have a conversation with your representative and say, hey, I need help here. Your mileage may vary, but usually we're always going to be around enabling you to adopt the product. Marvin and
I don't know if Wouter has like another question.
Yeah.
Like he raised his hand.
I think
Otherwise,
we scared him.
One other, but maybe if you want to close up, that's okay.
yeah, I just like wanted to maybe say like, first of all, thank you very much, Hugo, for the introduction to this Power Pages topic, and also like thanks very much, Nikita and Hugo, for like answering all the questions like way over the time. I guess like that's yeah, like a big round of applause worth to give to them. And I would say if there are like any more questions, like maybe we have like 5 more minutes, if that's okay to you guys. If there's like one more question that we can answer, there's like at least one in the Microsoft Forms page, but it's like more like someone mentioned something about a discount. Yeah, there's like, I guess it was about the Microsoft Power Platform conference here.
That's correct.
You can like get your discount. And yeah, I would say like one more question if someone has one. And thanks very much for both of you guys answering like all the questions and bringing us Power Pages a little bit closer to us.
Thank you. Well, the one thing I wanted to say is today, through the fog of COVID, I hope that I was able to convince you that yes, Power Pages is a new product, but it comes with the maturity of Power Apps portals. It just makes it a lot easier for the maker experience, but also to integrate with the pro devs, right? And hopefully, even through the conversations that Nikita and I have had about things like custom APIs and virtual tables and things like that, we're able to convince you that unlike the majority of the Power Platform, when you reach the limits of what Power Pages can do, you're only starting. You can crack open the behind-the-scene code. You can integrate with custom APIs, custom data sources, and that's very exciting. I can't wait to see what you're going to be doing with Power Pages. And I'm here to answer more questions if you have any. And by the way, Power Platform Conference has early bird pricing, which ends on the 27th of June. So if you use this MPPCPP call UG, you'll get an additional $50 on top of the early bird pricing. And if you need an argument as to why you should go to the conference for your boss, tell them Hugo said you should come. If that doesn't work, we're going to have pretty much the majority, like a lot of the people from the product group are going to be there. A lot of the MVPs and Power Platform celebrities are going to be there. And I definitely hope to see you there. And unlike some of the other conferences, it's really intended to be more in-depth, not marketing fluffy stuff. And I believe Nikita is doing a workshop too for Power Pages.
Yep. So definitely will be there.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess when there's like no more questions, and like thanks again very much, Hugo and Nikita, for like staying so long with us, answering like all the questions. It was like amazing, and I wish like everyone having a nice day. Hugo, get well pretty soon.
Thank you.
And yeah, hope to see you again like next time.
Absolutely. We're happy to come back anytime.
Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much.
And hopefully we'll see you in Orlando.
Hopefully, yeah.
Bye. Thank you, Nikita, for your help.